We've finally finished our river pour table, our camphor laurel. I can pick all the mistakes, but it's come up pretty good. Look how these checks jump out at you. So this was done river pour using the Lucy Clear, filled him up, and you'll see it through the video. Then we machined it and both sides, and on this side we've done the pour on gloss. Look how it jumps out at you. The character in the timber is absolutely magnificent. I'm not happy with the pour because we ended up with some air bubbles, but we'll fix that. We'll just grind it back and start again. And the other side, which is your more durable side, we've done with aqua coat. So this had a couple of coats of aqua coat on it and let it dry, and it ran into the centre and ended up with some runs. So I sanded it and put another 3 coats on top. That's looking pretty good. I reckon with another 2 or 3 coats you'd have a really nice gloss and filled in grain, and it makes it tough. You know, I can scratch that and not worry about it. And that's only 2 days old. It takes 4 days to fully cure. Beautiful product, beautiful finish. I scored a piece of camphor laurel off a bloke when I did a job for him, and he'd cut this, and it's 50mm thick, and we're going to turn it into a river pour table. Brian's actually sanded it down. I forgot to do anything before we started sanding, but this is after putting the belt sander on it, getting rid of a whole heap of sore marks, and then finished off with a random orbital sander with 80 grit, and she's looking pretty good. I'll just lift her up on the other side. I think the other side's got to be the top. Look at that. Wouldn't think a bit of manky old camphor laurel could look so good. It's going to look magic once the epoxy's on it. We've now cut our piece of camphor laurel in half, and we've got it set up on a piece of chipboard with melamine on it, all marked out, ready to go. It's been sanded, so all this surface here has been cleaned with one of these fellas on a drill. So they're great for cleaning up rough surfaces on timber, even epoxy. You can clean up, so if you get epoxy down here, you can clean it up and take the gloss off it. So now we're ready to go. It's all been marked out. Next step is to set it up. We're going to try something radical. We've done it on a small scale where we're not going to put a frame right around. We're just going to use baking paper and no more gaps. So we'll show you that as we go. And we've got our fingers crossed that we can take it from a small scale setup up to a full table. And it's going to make doing your pours so much easier. We started out putting our timber down with the ends on, but we found it's a problem. So now we've relayed the greaseproof paper and put one side down first. Now we're going to put the other side. You'll see even here we've had problems where it wants to crease a bit, but you'll have the same problem with plastic.
More so with plastic?
Yeah, more so with plastic. We've still got a little bit there, but I think we can pretty well pull that out. Let's see how we go. So with the greaseproof paper, we've got it on the bottom, and we've put no more gaps in about that far, but it spreads right out. You'd be surprised how much it spreads out, and it creates a really good seal, so that when we pour the Lucy Clear in, we're going to contain it. So this piece of timber is 50 odd mil thick, isn't it? We'll do a 20 mil pour today. It's quite cool. It's probably about 18, maximum 20 degrees C in here where we're working. So I expect the Lucy Clear to be very slow going off, and we'll keep an eye on it with the infrared thermometer, and we may even do a second pour today, but we'll get 20 mil down to start off with. So we're pouring our resin. Oops. And 300 mil. What do we get? 330.
Yeah, it's 300.
And we're putting it into a 4 litre bucket, and we'll mix it from there. So when you're mixing with a drill and a paddle, make sure you keep the paddle well below the surface. If you do that, you won't induce air bubbles. You bring the paddle to the surface, that's when you'll induce your air bubbles. So this can take 5 to 6 minutes of mixing, before it's okay to pour. And what you're looking for, you've got to get rid of all the separation lines. It's extremely important. So we've mixed this for 5 or 6 minutes now, and it's looking pretty good. Scraped around the edges, pulled it in. We've used this mixer on slow speed, keeping it right in the bottom. We've got rid of all the separation lines. It's now pretty well right to pour. We're in no hurry to pour. This stuff's really slow in reacting. It's important to mix it properly. It's extremely important. So, looking pretty good. I can't see any separation lines now. So, we might go and pour him. But before we do, I'm going to get the digital thermometer and I'm going to check the air temperature just to show you. Our ambient air temperature is about 19.4, 19.5. Let's have a look at our epoxy and see what we got. 20.1. So she's risen a degree. It's rising slowly, but look at it. So we'll go and give it a pour and see how it goes. In here our surface temperature of our timber and everything is around 18.5. So let's do our pour and see what happens. So notice how Brian's pouring on the sloped surface. Don't just pour it in the bottom. You'll do much better pouring it out slower like this and let it run down the sloped surface. That helps with the surface tension and breaks the air bubbles. That's back at 18.1, 18.2. I don't think we'll have a problem with this resin at all today. The temperature's low. The ideal temperature to do this at's between 22 and 24 degrees C. There we are, we've done our first pour and we've got about 10 mil in there. Oh, it's interesting. So we've got 23.1, 24 odd down that end, 25, whereas down this end it's colder, it's 20 degrees C. So, I think it was all poured from that end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, so see it was all poured from that end. So it's been let run down this way, and it gets cooler as you get down this end. That's what's going on. So we're around 22, 23 degrees C. So that's pretty good. So that's our second pour. That was done about 20 minutes after our first pour. So we've got to about 20 mil deep, and that's what Boatcraft reckon you do in one hit. So don't do more than 20 mil. But I'm going to push this. If this stays around 21, 22 degrees C and doesn't get any hotter, I'm going to look at another pour. So we'll see how we go. Here's a little trick for you. See all those air bubbles there? We're going to make them disappear. Don't use a heat torch. The worst thing you can do is apply heat, because what does timber do is it warms up. It releases air and moisture, and you'll get air bubbles in your job, and especially if there's little holes and that, it'll keep coming out. And another reason we've got to keep the Lucy clear when we're putting it on deep pours like this, we only want to do 20 mil at a time. So in this case a 20, a 15 and maybe a 10, maybe 2 10s. We'll see how we go. We're lucky it's May in Australia, in Sydney, so the temperature's low. Our ambient temperature in here today is only about 17, 18 degrees C. So it's going to take a lot for this to warm up. So it's a great time to be doing this stuff. In a summer's day, you really need to air condition where you're going to do this stuff, because the ideal temperature is around 22 to 24 degrees C. Any hotter and you're going to get exotherm. And once it starts getting exotherms where it generates its own heat, it'll start to take off. And if it takes off, it'll get that hot that it'll go off in 10, 15 minutes max. And what happens when it does that, it expands a lot. As soon as it's cured, it tries to shrink as it cools down, and you'll hear all sorts of banging and crashing and dirty big cracks appearing. That's why you get the cracks, because it gets too hot, goes off too fast, and then whammo, you got a mess. So little trick to get rid of air bubbles is bubble dispersant. Works really well. Keep your eye on these fellas. We're just going to mist some over the surface and you watch them disappear. Look at that. Magic. So the old bubble dispersant, brilliant stuff. We'll just mist it along and all our bubbles are gone. Look at that. Crystal clear. Can't do better than that. According to our thermometer we've got 24.5, but I got a feeling our meter's a little out. So 23.5. So we'll do another pour. Brian's going to pour it from that end. Let's go. And I might do one later on tonight. Look at that. We're going to have a Mickey Mouse table once we get this done. So there's pour number 3. Each one's 1350 ml. So we started about 2 o'clock the Savo, Brian.
Yep.
And we're now to 5 o'clock and we've done 3 pours. Don't try this in the middle of summer. We got room temperature at present 17.9, 18 degrees, and that's pretty well what we've had all afternoon. So we got low temperatures because the ideal temperature to pour Lucy Clear at is at about 22 to 24 degrees C. So we're in ideal conditions because we've got the temperature low, but by increasing the amount of Lucy Clear we're still maintaining that temperature. Yeah, the digital thermometer's out a bit too because it's given us 22.4 at present. So oops, we're gone to 20, back to 24 odd. So it's cooler down the ends than what it is once you get in a bit. Is this fun or what? I'm down to the last pour. I did a pour last night. We've got about 5 ml to fill up, if we're lucky. Notice our dam and our greaseproof paper. It's holding really well. We haven't had one leak from this, and I have every expectation that when we pull this apart, we'll be able to pull the greaseproof paper straight off. It's worked really well. I poured this last night, and we had it was at about 25 degrees C, and we've dropped down to just under 24 degrees C. It's gelled, but it's still quite sticky. Our timber, if you have a look, is 18 degrees C. Our ambient air temperature in here is around just under 18. So that stayed warm all night. And she's been cooking off very slowly. That's why you can't do this in high temperatures. In summer, you have to be in an air-conditioned room and make sure you've got no more than 23 to 24 degrees C room temperature when you do pours. The problem is that you do 20 ml thick pours above that temperature. If the temperature of your mix gets above about 40 degrees C, there's a chance you'll get exothermic runaway, and that's when you get all the cracking and yellow and ugly mess. So it's not one of those things you see on the YouTube videos that you can pour 2 dirty great buckets in and let it mix and do it all in one go. You might be able to up in the north of US in the middle of winter when they're struggling to get room temperatures above 10 degrees C. That's when you could get away with doing it, but not in Australia. And that's it. So I'm going to do the last pour. This looks fairly clear. I've just plonked the resin and hardener in here, so I've put 300 ml of resin, then 150 ml of hardener, 300 ml of resin, another 150 ml of hardener in. And that helps mix it in its own right. At least it's sitting in there layered, ready for us to take to it. Now I've found in larger quantities like this, hand mixing doesn't work the best, or it takes you a long time to get there. You get a much faster result with power mixing. And don't worry about the air bubbles. I'm going to show you. This thing's going to be absolutely chockers with air bubbles when we're finished. But by the time it gets down and it's there for a few minutes, you won't see any air bubbles. This product is amazing. Okay, mixing. Here we go. Go for it. And I'll show you the sort of level you've got to get to. This could have done, the resin could have done to being a bit warmer. I didn't warm the first lot up before I poured it in. Again, I like to have the resin around 22, 24 degrees C. We're going to trap a lot more air bubbles in this morning because of our air temperature. I'll just knock this back to 1. Number 2 probably isn't helping. How's that for aerated? The only problem I've got with aerating it this much is it's hard to tell to make sure whether I've got it mixed properly. That's a bit of a bugger. Anyway, let it settle for a few minutes and then I'll check. Because what you can see, if it's not mixed properly, you'll get layering. It's like putting different temperature water together. You get lines, very slight lines in it, and they're distinct, and you can really tell it. Anyway, I'm going to let that sit a few minutes. There's no hurry with this. We've got a load of our bubble dispersant. This stuff's amazing. Look at them. It's like rain hitting a puddle of water. Reduces the surface tension, just knocks the guts out of bubbles. The reason I did this is I want to see if I can see the dispersion layers if it hasn't mixed properly yet. Notice how many air bubbles are in this. I'll leave it a bit longer. Okay, final pour coming up. We got our bucket of Lucy Clear ready to roll. And we're going to pour her in. I'm going to pour it in from the centre this time and let it go both ways. So you should fill it right up. I like to pour on an edge, not too fast. That way it breaks the large bubbles to start off with. Don't pour it hard into your already gelled resin, because that's where you stand a chance of trapping air bubbles. Look at the colour coming out in this. Oh, camphor laurel, eh? I welded a broken cast iron piece of a machine tool, large timber working machine, up for a friend from the Wooden Boat Association. And you'll find the video on welding that up. I used Epoxy to weld up the cast iron piece that had broken, and for that he gave me this piece of camphor laurel, and at the time I thought, you miserable bugger, after all the work and effort I put in. And he had this cut, and unfortunately I didn't take a photo of it before we cleaned it up, because it was horrible. It had grass and dirt and all sorts of shit hanging off it. Brian, my Mr. Projects, got into it and he's made it look beautiful. Oh geez, went over the edge, got a bit too ambitious, eh? Worst of having a camera in one hand and working with the other. See there even now how the air bubbles have already dispersed. I'll naturally come out of this fella. It's pretty neat stuff. So I'll leave our bucket sit there for a minute and drain down. And away we go, and that's him. Here's our camphor laurel table. I've finished pouring. It's run over in a few places, so I've filled right up. And the reason to overfill is to ensure, as it shrinks back slightly as it cures, then you've got enough resin there that it's above the level of your timber. So that's what my aim is. We've done pretty well. We're sitting on about 24, 25 degrees C, so that's pretty good. You need to be careful of it doesn't go higher. I've stuffed up, but I did a pour last night and it hasn't gelled the best. And if you look where the little red dots are, you'll see lumps in it. And that's because when I finished the pour off this morning, it's melted. There's another spot here too. You can just see it looks like little clear waves. What it is, the resin had partly gelled. It was still quite liquid, but, and when I poured the stuff in on top, it hadn't gelled enough that it wouldn't move. It's pushed it to one side, and I've ended up with these lumps and bumps. I think I've got rid of them all. It's looking pretty good and level now, but they do show up. I'm hoping once I sand it to put the finished coat on it that I can get rid of them, but we'll have to wait and see. Okay, there's our pour finished. I've been spreading the excess resin over the rest of the top. Not a bad piece of camphor laurel, eh? I think I scored well. A pity I didn't take any photos before I bloody started pouring. Our river pour is solid. It's still not cured fully. These fellas here are still a little soft. It'll take a few days before it's totally cured. We're now going to take the top off this so we can finish it off. Baking paper pulled straight away from it. Magic bloody way to contain it. So you can see where we put the no more gaps in each side, and then put the baking paper up and then presented our bit of timber, and that's what held it together with some clamps. Worked absolutely brilliant. So we'll lift her off now and see what the rest of it's like. So we've just lifted the table off. Now all we had as a base was melamine, then the baking paper down, and then we stuck the no more gaps to that. We got to sort out how to stop this sticking. We think if we use a bit of spray on adhesive on here and put the baking paper to that first, so it's held down before we present it to the timber. Look at this. Hey, peeling straight off. A wonder way to seal your mould. There you go. All done. So she's ready to clean up and hit with another coat on the bottom. Next step in our tabletop. Mine's made up a base with pieces of 4x2 and a box for our router to run in. So our router will sit in here like this. We'll be able to move him backwards and forwards and shave the top off our piece of timber. So we're going to give it a go, see how we go. We've done a couple of test cuts and it's working beautiful. Nice and flat, so we'll do a couple of goes to get right along. See how it's low in the middle? That's why you've got to over pour so that you make sure you get him filled. Anyway, we'll keep rolling along. We're taking the first cut on using our router, and it's coming up pretty good. So we're locking it down. Notice how it's different in different heights. We run 2 or 3 swipes, and one end is nearly through the timber. The other end is still got about 3 mil to take off before we get back to the timber. And that's what you're doing this for, to level the slab out and get it even thickness. We'll cut into this end on the other side before we cut into the timber on that end. When we're cutting the epoxy with the carbide tip, it's pretty hard on it and it'll blunten a bit. What I'm going to do, I've got a diamond stone or a diamond lapping tool. I'm just going to give this a bit of a clean up. So just start on the bottom edge and have your angle back a bit until it starts to shine up, and then bring it across. Clean up, because where the damage will be is right in this corner. So we give him a good clean. You've got to have a bit of angle on it, and these things will really sharpen the carbide tip back up. And we'll do a bit on the edge. Just clean him up. Oops, I've been a bit high there. bit more angle on it. So you got to make sure you got clearance angle when you do it. It's actually worn down here. See how I'm not getting on there? It's shiny up this way because I've already done this once before and I haven't used right along, so I've got to clean this up a bit. These diamond laps are brilliant for bringing carbide tips back to life, even on lathe tools. They work really well. Not on your replaceable pieces, but where you've got a solid carbide tip. See how I've nearly cut that right down now? I'm going to get right into that corner. And that's a bit of wear as well. It's not just from me cleaning up before. See how we got it shiny all the way along, and we just got that slight bit there. I've got to get that off yet. So I'll just keep working away. So when you haven't got machine tools to sharpen your tips or your cutters, this is how you do it. Go and invest in one of these fellas. They're really good value. Most good engineering supplies will have them. We're nearly there. That's him. We've put a sharp edge back on there now and it'll cut really well. I might just give a little rub along the face. Clean this crap off first. You don't want the residue getting on your tip. And just go along, run him along. Because it will wear a little bit on the face as well. Oh, that's looking good. Magnificent. Now I'll work on the other one. That's an old saying I was once told many moons ago: hindsight is brilliant. And in this case, we should have machined the bottom first, because when we put our no more gaps down, it's kept the timber up higher and it's allowed us to put a decent layer of epoxy down. And you can see how thick we're cutting there. We're cutting 3-4 mil deep there, and we're not cutting bugger all off the edges. And we've had a couple of low spots. So next time round we'll use our router jig and we'll start from the bottom, not the top. I started out routing this slab with this poor old Ryobi, or Bosch it is. It's about 25 years old. I might pack it up and send it to my ex-mate. It's died. This cutter, a 20mm cutter. Anyway, I dived up and bought this fella, and with a 24-30mm cutter, and look at the difference in the finish compared to what we're getting with the old fella. You know, it was rough as guts, it was slow as hell. This new one cuts like butter. If you're going to do any of this work with cleaning up slabs, go and get yourself a 1/2-inch drive router. Works much. I've sanded it, and that's what she looks like when it's freshly sanded. I'm doing the underside. I took it down to 320 with a random orbital sander. I've still got some divots in the bottom, but I've got to live with it because I've got to get this thing done for a show for the Timber and Tools and Artisans show in Sydney next weekend. So see how the colour jumps out at you as soon as you put some aqua coat on it. I'm doing it with aqua coat. There's our aqua coat. Best polyurethane in the marketplace, water based, and it's magnificent. Wash out in water. Got our first coat on, and the timber's already sucked it right in. It's still wet on the epoxied area, but soaked it right in. Look how we've got the timber coming back up through it already. And there's aqua coat. Wait until we do the pour on gloss on the other side. Isn't that going to look smart? So I want to get at least 4 or 5 coats of this. I just put a coat on. Even now I can see I've missed a couple of spots. A couple of spots where it looks like it's thicker. That's alright. We'll pick it up the next coat. I'm going to go across the grain next coat, and we'll start to build it up from there. We've finished cutting our slab back. See, we've ended up with a whole heap of router marks and chips. We'll get rid of that but when we do our pour. So we're going to pour on gloss on this today, and I'll show you how to do it as we go. But they look pretty nasty there, but you won't even know they're there by the time I'm finished. So we've put our coat of pour on gloss with 50% metho in it. We put a little bit less metho actually, because we wanted to fill in some of these divots. and down the other end we've done a bit better job of it. But wanted to make sure we get right into the deeper areas of this, because if you don't wet out beforehand, especially in the timber, and fill any fine cracks in, when you do your pour on gloss pour, you'll see little streams of bubbles coming up. So if you're doing porous timber like the camphor, you need to make sure you do the pre-coat first. See the colour already starting to jump out at us. Wait until we get a coat of pour on gloss on. You got to it before I could. I just wanted to show how you get the interface. So see how it goes very yellow when you first start mixing. When you mix it in, it'll come back fairly clear. It'll have a yellow tinge to it, but you won't notice it down when it's down on the surface. We got U-Butte mixing sticks for this one. Don't muck around with tongue depressors. These fellas, they're pretty good. They're cheap. Only 20 or 30 cents each. And away we go. We have a mixing good time. So we got him pretty well mixed, but when you use the pour on gloss, because you've got to mix fairly fast, we put it into a second container. I'm going to use a 4-litre bucket, so throw her in there, Brian. And I'll give that a quick mix once it's in, so scrape as much as you can off. That way you make sure you're not taking any unmixed stuff down onto your surface. That's enough. Start mixing another lot, Tangles. I'll go and have a pouring good time. We'll start up one end of this beast and we'll just pour it on. That's what it's called, pour on gloss. Pour on for a reason. See how it's fairly fluid? Look at that. Notice I haven't gone near the edges. I'm going to bring it to the edge. Never scrape out of the bucket you're pouring on. That's it. That's enough. That's ready to go for our next lot now. We'll pour straight into there. So I'm going to tease out a bit. Draw it out towards the edge. Just drag it along. See how it'll fill back in. See how it's quite thick in the middle there. Okay, I'm nearly up to the other end and she's starting to look good. So I've stayed right away from the edges. You look, it hasn't gone over the edge in any spot, and I'm teasing it along. So I'll pour here now and get in and get him poured. You'll notice I won't scrape the stick out of this end. Just tease him out. Tease him out towards the edge. Brian rewarmed the containers before he poured this lot. The last one, I could tell it was a lot thicker and slower. It didn't want to spread as well. So this one's spreading much better. Tease him out towards the edge. That's the way. Bring him out. Walk, baby, walk. That's enough. See him over there. Bring him back towards the centre. This is a good way to drag the air bubbles out too. Just to stick nice and gently through it. It'll naturally pull back in there if it's if there isn't enough resin. It'll naturally walk to the low spots. Tease him out. Oh, she's starting to gel here.
Shit, that's
See, it's getting, oh yeah, this stuff gels really fast. Starting to get crease lines in it. See how it's slow go flattening out? It's alright. No drama. Right. I'll take it in this hand. Give this one a good mix.
Yeah, you can see it goes cloudy, then it goes
Yeah.
clear.
going to scrape right around here. Alright, let's pour around our edge. Let's see how good we are. Oh, that's nice and warm. Whoops, we're going over. Once it starts to go over, it'll pull over. So you got to be careful. Like icing on a cake. A technique that I've found works very, very well is when the resin's still really green, like so. Notice how we'd masked yesterday, right? We masked right along. You'll always get this line along the bottom, and then you just pull it when it's really green. Just keep pulling it. Pull down. Pull down. It'll always leave an edge there. Don't sweat. You're going to pull it away. Just pull it back. We'll have a bit of fun there. But once you get that edge, we then get our knife, wherever that's hiding. Here we are. Just a disposal blade knife. It's nice and sharp. And back here like this. And just put it on a slight angle and let it cut away. Use the blade on the surface of your coated timber. And don't try and do it all in one go. Right, just cut it away. Start back here again. Whoops, we'll get in the light. Just take your knife along nice and flat. Nice thin cuts. Because you've got to remember this is still quite green at this stage. Okay. And that's as simple as that. End up with a nice sharp edge. Again, just clean up. And you might go over it 2 or 3 times before you're happy. So when I've got it with just a knife on the flat, what I tend to do is then tilt the knife towards the edge. Just slightly, so you put a little bit of bevel on it. You find if you were doing this on the bare timber you'd have more trouble, because this has already been coated underneath with the aqua coat. Sometimes you get a bit of glue stuck on your blade. Just run your nail along the edge of the blade. Oops. Just run your nail along the edge like that. And be careful you don't take a layer of skin off when you do it. Right. There we are. See how she's cutting a lot better now. I've just cleaned that blade up that little bit. There's a bit of resin sitting there and causing some heartache. There you go. Feel nice and neat. I've sanded our table back, or our tabletop back, and I did it down to 320. Then I put 2 coats of aqua coat on. One about 5 p.m. One just now at about 7:30 p.m. I've got my fingers crossed I'm going to be able to put another one on before I go to bed tonight, and that should do it. I want that to do it because I haven't got time to muck around. We've got the timber show on in a couple of days time, and that's it. And it's come up looking pretty good now. I've given it a sand after a couple of coats initially. It's going to be looking damn fine by tomorrow.